Right. It says I'm recording. Am I?
Okay, you're live.
All right, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the delay. Uh, Hi, Nathan. Good to see you. For some reason, I pushed. Whoa! Sorry, I'm here. I pushed a button that somehow cut out by mistake. Hi, Amanda. Nice to see you. Good to have you here. So today we're going to talk about the Victorian age. But before I start, I want to share a cup of tea. Today is a tea day. It's cold outside. I hope you're enjoying your tea, and it's a wonderful tradition. It's almost universal now, but leave it to the English for introducing it. So today we're having tea, and I have a suggestion for all of you that are locked up in the house. One of the hardest things to manage in this situation are bananas, because they go bad really fast. So I would, hi June, nice to see you. I would really recommend that you take your bananas before they spoil, peel them, and freeze them. It's a really nice treat. It almost feels like ice cream or dessert, and you should have a banana a day to keep the doctor away. We got to keep the doctors away. Hi Joe, nice to see you. So today we're going to talk about Victoriana and what it was like to be in a Victorian household. I grew up with two parents that were really raised in a Victorian household. Twyla's, my wife's mother, referred back to her grandmother, which was the same age as my mother. And they all had Victorian ideas of housekeeping. One day would be one thing, the next day would be another. We still kind of do that, like in the Victorian age, the first Monday after Sunday would be cleaning the bathrooms and cleaning up the rooms. Tuesday would be gathering the laundry and washing them. It depends on the house. There are different ways they did it. And then it was all regimented. And then Wednesday would be ironing day. And then Thursday would be shopping for food. And then Friday would be cooking the food. And then Saturday would be getting ready for Sunday and putting things in a brick oven or whatever to have Sunday dinner, because everyone believed that the Sabbath should be kept and rest on the seventh day, and it was the only day that Victorian workers were off, whether farmers or anyone. So I'm going to show you some things. I'll start with a photo of my dad and his brother. My dad was born in 1901. My mother was born in 1900. And this picture was probably about 1903, I think. I think they were either 2 or 3 years apart from each other. His younger brother was Wesley, and he died at 18 of spinal meningitis. There were two diseases going around in this small town in Ohio. One was TB and the other was spinal meningitis. So I'm going to show you a picture of them, and he's dressed in a sailor suit, which actually when I was 6 and was adopted, my folks put me in the sailor suit, but it was a World War II sailor suit, like a Navy suit. I'm going to try to see if you can see it. Where am I? Well, Oh, just 1 second. I got to reverse the camera. I'm being sloppy today. Okay, now we're going to look at Victoriana. This is the picture of my, it's hard with the reflection, of my dad and his brother. And if you notice, the brother, the young baby brother, let me try it the other way. Maybe I can do it this way. Too much reflection. The baby brother, here we go. Let's try this. There we go. So my dad was about 3, Waldo Emerson Isley, and His brother was named Wesley. I'm not sure of his middle name. Anyway, one day I'll show a picture of him when he was in high school before he died. But he did contract spinal meningitis. My dad, when he was a teenager, was thrown out of school before high school because there was an Isley in the neighborhood who had married this woman who was very careless. There was a plague of TB around that time. That would have been around before World War I. And so she died and was very careless and infected all kinds of people. So the Isley name delivered a sense of shame. So that's my my dad and his brother. Now note that baby clothes then were very different until we were about the age of my dad, maybe a little bit younger. Boys and girls would wear skirts. There's a reason for that, and that is that it was easier to change the diapers. Remember, diapers were not throwaway then. They had to be all washed on a washboard, and it was quite a messy mess, to say the least. And it would be much easier for them to learn to go potty without having a suit on. So that's why everybody, boys and girls, both wear dresses. And both of our girls were, when we christened both of our girls, we had Victorian baby dresses, really long ones from England, both for Rachel and Abigail. So that's that. Let's go on, and I'm going to show you the next part, which is having tea, which will show you a bit about how Victorian society was organized. This is what's left of my mother's family toy tea set. Here you see a young girl ironing. Oh no, they're cooking. They're cooking. There's hot water on the stove, a teapot, and they're cooking. And it's it looks there like a stone oven, but later it would be a wood stove. This may have come from Germany. I don't know. It's not marked. Both families were German background. My great-grandmother was a femme franc. She fell in love with a commoner who worked in the kitchen and came over when she was young. She didn't even know how to comb her hair by herself when she came. So here is cleaning day. You scrub the floor with a brush, with a broom, and then you take the ladder and go up and clean if they were oil lamps, you'd have to clean them every week. So every day was something. Like one day would be ironing day, one be cooking day, another be folding day. Monday would be cleaning bathrooms. That's the first thing you do. And I imagine this is from Monday. Hey, William, nice to have you with us. So every day there was something to do. I'm going to show you a broom that we got in Ireland, and I think I'll just bring it over and then I'll put us back onto the display. I've got two things here. One is something we got in Ireland as a memento when we went a few years ago. We loved being there. It was when Rachel was born, and it was in her 30s. This is a street sweeper's broom in Ireland. It's made out of bushes. I think it's heather sticks after the heather's gone. And when we were there in early 80s, they were using these still on the streets. Hey, William, good to see you. So, but this is what we would use, and this is what a lot of people used even in the Victorian era, beside the one you saw with the scrub brush. I'm going to show you, this is a picture of my dad's grandparents. And this was a log cabin built by a renegade Indian. And if you see they look kind of like Quakers, but this is really pre-Victorian or very early Victorian. And she has a sunbonnet. I still have my grandmother's sunbonnet that she would wear when she's worked out in the field so they wouldn't get sunburn. And it has a flaps that you tie around your chin. And next time I'll show you a picture of two of them doing that. And thank you, William, for joining us. It's great. All right, let me go on to the next thing. Okay, so one of the housekeeping standards was beating rugs. You would take your rug every week and put it out on the, it was before vacuums. The earliest vacuum was a Bissell carpet sweeper, and it had brushes, and we used to have one where it would brush the wall-to-wall carpets. Some of the rugs were rag rugs where there were tied knots of rags and then nailed to the floor. It was kind of the early wall-to-wall carpeting, then later it was broadloom. This is a rug beater, and notice the wonderful medieval symbol for the Trinity. It has a nice long handle, and you would beat the rug on the line outside and beat it until all the dust got out of it. You do that before you hung clothes out so that the dust wouldn't go on to the fresh clothes. The other thing that my mother and my grandmother did, mostly my grandmother, they were German and they loved ketchup, homemade ketchup. The kids, there were a lot of kids, and they would sit. We used to have a big granite container, huge. It was a boiler for these kind of bottles to sterilize them. My grandmother had a big copper kettle, and she would cook tomatoes down with spices and then vinegar. And then all 8 children would come by and want a cup of fresh, hot ketchup. That's how much they love ketchup. It's kind of a German genetic thing for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, so this is one of the early mason jars. This was one that my grandmother had. They don't make these anymore, and it has the lead top. And you would seal this, and then they would stay. Now, my mom loved to can things, and when they were first married in the, I think it was the early 30s, they were married in 27. In the 30s, there was a huge earthquake in Long Beach. My dad was an electrician. He wired lighting on oil derricks. Hi, Robert. Nice to have you here. So she canned a whole bunch of things that year before the big earthquake. And the big earthquake was so bad that people had to move out of their houses and camped out in the front yard. It was total devastation. Anyway, so the earthquake happened, and my mom, they were newly married, and they were trying to save money, and they had all these fresh vegetables canned. It was California. And then the earthquake came. Every one of the jars just dumped down into the garage. They had to just shovel it all out. It was all gone afterwards. Pretty discouraging. I don't think after that my mom ever did it much. My grandmother did. She loved to do it. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, just before I take another cup of tea, or a sip, is show you an old-fashioned iron. Ironing was quite something. And I think I'll reverse this now so you can see. And I'll bring this iron over because it's so heavy I can't put it up close to the camera. Sorry for my back. This is an early version of a steam iron, kind of. I'm not sure. It was given to me by a conservator. She used it for weights for paper, works on paper. And it has this spout where the steam comes out, or smoke comes out. And there's a nail that holds it together. Then down inside there's a grate where the coals would be. And it looks like there was some water in there. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's where the coals would be. I hope you can see this. You see if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. There you go. There would be coals in that, and this thing weighs, I didn't weigh it, but it's as heavy as lead. And then the smoke would come out here, or steam. and then you put a nail in it, and it holds it together. This was patented in September 7, 18, it looks like 54. It's either 84 or 54. I think it's 54 actually. Anyway, and it's American, and it was FC Atom Company, something like that. Anyway, but the normal one would be, this is a miniature from the American Girl doll collection, because Samantha and some of the early American Girl dolls. This is what you'd normally use. I have an example of it here, but I couldn't find it. I'll show it to you another day. But you would heat these up on the wood stove and then iron the clothes. It was totally laborious. And I remember my mother telling me that her mother actually grew up in a tailor's house, and she actually had this instrument that could do pleats. You would put these, it had like channels like that, and you could iron it, and it would pleat the make the pleats permanent. So in the bedrooms, here's what we would have, and I can bring this one around. It would have what's called a washstand. Just one second. This was a washstand. This is a miniature one, again from American Girl. The below, hi Don, good to see you. The below is where you would put the chamber pot, the potty, so that when you got up in the middle of the night, you could use that to go to the bathroom, to urinate or whatever, and then the next day it would be emptied in the morning. If you had servants, they would take it out immediately. But then on top, I have, if you saw it, I'll put it back on the bed again and show you, but there's a real picture, bowl and pitcher from the early 1900s with polychrome flowers. I have a flower arrangement in it, but that's what you would use to wash in the morning. So there would be, you'd pour this into the bowl, the deep bowl, and then you'd take a towel off of here and shave or whatever you needed to do with that. So, and then the drawer underneath would be shaving equipment, soap, whatever you would need. So this was a complete corner. It really was the substitute for a bathroom, because most of the houses that had this would have had outhouses, and you can't go out in the middle of the night when it's cold. So that's why these were made. If you watch Downton Abbey, you could see charwomen and people carrying all kinds of things around all the time. Now, I'm going to show you, I'm going to reverse it again here and show you the that pot right there. It has a burner underneath it. That is a teapot for hot water when you're serving tea, to heat up the tea after you've made it in the pot. And this has a small burner. Usually it was by the fireplace, so it would kind of help keep it warm. But this was like a little bit like a Bunsen burner alcohol burner, and that would keep the teapot, and you'd add some of the hot water into that. Behind, you can see the flower arrangement and the pitcher and bowl. That was a central part of the bedroom, those things. Now I want to show you a photo of my folks when they were married, or before they were married, when they were young. I'll tell you a story about that. I forget the year I think they were married. Oh, they were married in 27, so they were a little bit older than most. My mother was the one staying at home, and her father, who was a minister, had diabetes, and she thought she would have to stay there, but he gave a blessing, and she did. My dad was very handsome and was an electrician. He left home at 18 because he was thrown out of school because the family had TB, and they thought he had what they call a catarrh. I don't know what that is, but it was like a bronchial cough. it was genetic, and they thought it was TB. So he left this small pokey town, Spencerville, Ohio, and went out to California and worked on the Irvine Ranch back when it was a huge ranch. That's where Laguna Hills and everything is now. It was like thousands and thousands of acres, Spanish land grant. And he lived in a barracks that's still there that was built about 1910, and the men lived there. And he met my mom. He hadn't really been going to church, but somehow he met my mom through his aunt inviting him to go to church. My mom was so happy at this point, so cute. Both of them, look how trim they are, and I want to talk about that. Victorian nutrition was interesting. I did a study on England, and Queen Victoria instituted a lot of hygiene things. So did we during the Civil War. But people visiting Queen Victoria at Windsor Castle or Buckingham Palace had to wait until she finished a course before they could eat. So nobody ever really got much food when they went to a formal dinner, because by the time she finished, they would have to gobble, and then it would be the next course. But originally, early in the 1800s, most people ate fish or oysters and maybe some cheese and beer. That was what they had for breakfast. Then later, Queen Victoria began to emphasize, with the expansion of the empire and being obsessive about cleanliness and learning a lot about it with medical discoveries, they started substituting to the English breakfast. And I remember when Twyla and I were in England, it was before Rachel came. It would have been in the early 70s, and or late 70s, sorry. And we stayed in the Cotswolds in this wonderful stone house that went way back to 1500 with the actual thatched roof, and it was just amazing inside with a huge hearth and probably about 50 brass things all polished. And this old lady ran it, and we went upstairs and we had this special room. It was all chintz, but it had a latch key on the inside. It was just the coolest, or wherever it is. It's a latch key anyway. You had to latch it a certain way. So I would go out trying to exercise. This was early in our marriage. So I would go out and take a walk, and we'd had a lot of English scones, way too many, and all the wonderful English food that everybody thinks of with white flour and sugar and all that. Anyway, she saw me running by the kitchen. So every time I go out to get exercise, she'd bake more biscuits and give me a second helping of fried bread. So the normal English breakfast after the Victorian period was fried bread, fried tomatoes, and usually 2 eggs and bacon, and sometimes potatoes, and coffee or tea. So that's how that started. Now, health was kind of interesting. I found out a really interesting factoid, which is bizarre, actually. Kellogg cereal, I know that most of you have used it, and it's around all the time. Mr. Kellogg was a health nut, and his hacienda was right with an orange grove, was right near where I grew up. Well, I discovered today that the reason he invented cornflakes was he believed that nutrition could prevent masturbation, and so that's why he introduced cornflakes. So just thought you'd like to know that. It's kind of bizarre. Anyway, so then I don't think I showed this to you. Maybe I did. I think I did. Anyway, just to repeat, my mom would, my grandmother would make lots of ketchup and then boil these bottles in a big boiler, and then when the ketchup was on the stove, made in a copper pot, all the kids, 8 kids, would come by and taste it. They liked to drink ketchup hot. They were German. So anyway, but this is what you would put in a boiler to sterilize it, and then you seal it when you put the lid on. There usually is a gasket inside. This one actually comes from the early part of the century. The other thing is, so on Sunday, usually Sunday dinner was a big deal, and you would, in most houses, even working class houses, there would be some kind of meat or chicken, something, and they would my grandmother had, I had it for a long time, but we never used it. She had what was called a brick oven. And so you would take the bricks and put them in the wood stove and heat them up. And then Sunday was a day of rest. So Saturday afternoon, she'd get everything prepared. The meat, usually potatoes, carrots, even celery sometimes, and onions, along with a piece of beef or chicken. And then it would go in that night, and it would stay on overnight until the bricks finished giving out heat, and that would be about noon on Sunday, which was usually the big meal. And on Sunday, they would always invite the bishop over or someone else to have a big feast, and it would come out of this, they called it a Dutch oven, which was a way to heat things slowly without having to stoke the stove all overnight. So I hope that these things have kind of helped to you lock into a few interesting things, and I just thought it would be interesting because it really can help us to be ingenious while we're locked up in our houses. So take what you can and ignore the rest, and I will be back tomorrow with some more factoids and artifacts. So tonight at 7 I will be on, and we'll be reading the chapter right after Aslan confronts and brings the queen to him, and she lets go of, I'm sorry, anyway, she lets go of the one young boy, but the queen gets even in the next chapter. We're going to find out about that. So please dial in at 7, and I look forward to seeing you again. I'm so glad you've all been with me, and God bless, and let's especially pray for people in New York. My daughter yesterday said that yesterday it just creeped her out early in the morning. There were 3 morgue trucks that came by, and then one parked across the street from her house. And all they're doing is stacking the bodies and taking them to refrigerated places or mass graves. It's really terrible. So all of Central Park has become a hospital for the most part. And her friends are sewing masks made out of paper. And anyway, do what you can. Check in with a neighbor, please. Love you all for stopping in, and see you tomorrow and tonight. Bye-bye.